The Rebbe starts off the Sikha by saying, as we know, that Elul connects the previous year and the coming year, the new year that's starting. And therefore, generally, we have two avodas in the month of Elul. We have that which is called a cheshbon tzedek, making a proper calculation and doing tshuva for everything of the previous year. We also are preparing for the coming year, taking nachlotos toivos, new resolutions, good resolutions, through which will be assured of a ksiva v'chsima toiva, shana toiva u'misuka. The Rebbe says the word Elul itself could really be divided into two parts, which are going to hint to these two avodos, the tshuva for the previous year and the hachana for the next year. So in this sikha, we're going to be looking at two different biurim of how this works. One from the Tzemach Tzedek, one from the Rebbe's father, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, and the Rebbe is also going to show the connection between these two perushim. The Tzemach Tzedek says that the word Elul, Aleph Lamed, Vav Lamed, so Aleph Lamed, turn it around the other way, is Lamed Aleph, Loi with an Aleph, which means not. And the next Vav Lamed, again, turned it around, is Loi, which means to him, but Loi with a Vav. So we have twice Loi, one with an Aleph, one with a Vav. In the Spherois, Loi with an Aleph represents the level of Keser, which is completely higher than Ishtalshalus. Loi with a Vav represents the 6 midos that are known as Zoz Eiranpin, the level that's already within the realms of the world called Ishtalshalus. The example where we see this idea, these two Lois, there's a number of psukim, but the one that Rebbe brings over here in the Sikha, the pasuk says, B'chol tzar rasam, and all the troubles of the Yidden, Loi tzar. What does Loi tzar mean? This has two meanings. There's one way of understanding it is Loi with a Vav, and then there's also Loi with an Aleph. Loi with a Vav would mean that he is pained and he is troubled because of the troubles down here, and Loi with an Aleph mean that it doesn't impact him. And the way Chassidus explains it, Kabbalah explains it, that there's a level of higher than Ishtalshalus. So there it's Loi with a Vav, that's Keser, where what's happening down here is not impacting as much up above. Loi with a Vav would mean the level of Ishtalshalus, where everything that's going on in our world has a very, very big impact. How does this relate to Chodesh Elul? Because in Chodesh Elul, on the one hand, we're saying what's shining is the Yud Gimel Midis Harachim, Hashem's 13 attributes of mercy. This level of Keser, this level of Loi with an Aleph, which is higher than Ishtalshalus. But at the same time, it's about coming down into our world, shining into our world, and that's the idea of Loi with a Vav. That's the Tzemach Tzedek's explanation. Now we turn to the Rebbe's father's explanation. And the Rebbe's father also divides the word Elul, but in a different way. He says when you look at the word Elul, so we have an Aleph Lamed and then a Vav Lamed. So we have Aleph followed by a Lamed, Vav followed by a Lamed. Aleph and Vav spell the word Oy. And each one of these letters is followed by a Lamed. What's the significance? The word Oy, the Zohar explains, is the sphere of Malchus. Within Malchus itself, the Rebbe's father explains, the Aleph and the Vav of the Oy, Aleph again represents that which is higher, the Keser of Malchus. Within Malchus itself, every one of the spheres, as we know, incorporates all the other spheres. So within Malchus itself, you have Keser of Malchus. That's hinted by the Aleph of the word Oy. And then the Vav of the word Oy represents Da'as of Malchus. Later on, we'll see why specifically these two, Keser and Da'as, why specifically are we focusing on these two? What's the idea of the Lameds next to each one of the Aleph and the Vav of Elul? So again, Elul is Aleph Lamed and Vav Lamed. So we know, the Mishnah tells us that Malchus, the idea of kingship, is acquired with 30 milos, 30 special qualities. Which would mean that in order to have Malchus the way it's supposed to be, it needs to be has to have certain qualities to be able to be built up to be the way it's supposed to be. It's getting certain higher hamshachah, certain higher spiritual qualities. And that's why there's a lamed associated with the Aleph lamed, and Vav lamed. Because both the Keser of Malchus and the Das of Malchus each need to be getting these extra powers to be able to be built up. What does this mean? So, first of all, and why are we even speaking about Malchus over here suddenly in connection to Chodesh Elul? So it's explained that the Churban that happened in Chodesh Av mainly impacted this sphere, the sphere called Malchus. And when it comes to the month of Elul, this is the time when we're trying to rebuild the idea of Malchus. Since Malchus was the one that's mainly impacted, we're trying to rebuild it. So these days, Yemei Elul, these Yemei Ratzin that come right after Av, when we're trying to rebuild Malchus, so the two main elements of Malchus, again, Keser and Das, are going to be rebuilt by putting in the Lameds, by refilling them with all of the energy and power they need to be able to be a proper sphere of Malchus. How do we understand the connection between the Pirush of the Tzemach Tzedek and the Pirush of the Rebbe's father? In addition to the simple thing that we see right away, that in both cases, the Aleph of Elul is going to be the level that's higher than Ishtalshlus, which is Keser. Remember in the Pirush of the Tzemach Tzedek, we said that that Loi with an Aleph represents that which is higher than Ishtalshlus. The Keser, the Loi with a Vav, is going to be the one that's more of Ishtalshlus. So again, in both Pirushim, but it's the Rebbe's father also, what we said was that when we have the Oi, Aleph, and Lamed, so we said the Aleph is the Keser of Malchus, so in both Pirushim, the Aleph is Keser, and in both Pirushim, the Vav represents that which is closer to Ishtalshalus. By the Tzemach Tzedek, it was the Midos. By the Rebbe's father, it was Das, which includes all the Midos, is the key to all the Midos. So that's number one. But in addition to all of this, let's try to go back to understand this idea of Keser of Malchus and Das of Malchus. The first thing that's needed by the Melech is that he needs to have an interest in being Melech. His pleasure, his enjoyment, his will, that he's interested in being a Melech. That in the language of Chassidus is usually that sphere, that darga called Keser. Keser is the level of Rotzain and Tainug. Pleasure, desire, and will. But on the other hand, we say, Ein Melech B'Layam. The king also has to relate to the people. He has to be a king over the people. He has to lower himself down and connect to the people. And these are the two ideas of Keser of Malchus. Keser is that time, the pleasure of being Melech. The Das is already his intimate connection with the people. Now, the difference between these two levels are going to be, as far as the Ratzah and the pleasure, the desire of the king, his own enjoyment, at this point, he's completely removed from the people. This is what's mainly being felt as his own level of being exalted, removed, and high. As far as this level is concerned, it's like the nation almost doesn't take up any space at all, completely insignificant. On the other hand, from the perspective of Das of Malchus, that he's actually running the country, so here, of course, it matters very much what's happening with the people. So now we could see the connection between the Pirush of Rab Levi Yitzchak and the Pirush of the Tzemach Tzedek. That is, on the Darga of Keser Malchus, which is the way Rab Levi Yitzchak understood that Aleph, and the Aleph connected with the Lamed. So that fits very well with what the Tzemach Tzedek said. Loi with an Aleph, that's also the level, Keser is also the level where Loitzar, where the actions of the Tachtoinim don't really take up so much space. Again, from the level of Keser, that level of the Tainug of the king being Melech, beyond the worlds, that's the place of Loitzar, where the actions of the world also doesn't matter as much. On the other hand, from the perspective of Das of Malchus, as Reb Levi Yitzchak explains, which is the level where the king is much more connected to the people, that also fits with the Loi with a Vav, which Tzemach Tzedek explains, where what happens down here very much impacts and the Dargos up above. Says the Rebbe, in connection now and in accordance with these two general ideas of the word of Elul, that which is completely higher than Ishtalshlus, where nothing is really impacted, or the level where it's very much impacts what we do, we'll now also have the two avoides that we said before of Chodesh Elul, which is the fixing of the previous year and the preparation for the coming year. The Rebbe first starts with a preparation for the coming year, and the Rebbe says, what's the main avoid of Rosh Hashanah? We're crowning Hashem as Melech. We're trying to arouse that deepest level within Hashem to be a Melech, to have the pleasure in being a Melech. But again, this is the place that really whatever is done down here is not even so significant. That's why we say in Rosh Hashanah, Yivchar Lanos Nachaseinu, Hashem is choosing us from a place that's really completely higher than all of our Avodah and Torah mitzvahs. This is a place where the Shoirish and the Neshama of the Yid is rooted in a place that's even higher than Torah and mitzvahs. How do we mainly bring this about? This is through the bittul, that the Yid nullifies himself and gives himself over to the Eibishter from the very, very depths of the Neshama. So this is all in that level of Hashem, the way Hashem is completely higher than the world, and the king is completely higher than the people. And therefore that's more like the Loi with the Aleph, or the Aleph, which we said is like the Keser of Malchus. But on the other hand, fixing the previous year, which is through the Cheshbon Tzedek for the Avodah that we got involved with or didn't get involved with in our Torah and mitzvahs, how we're following the laws of the king. This is already the level of Malchus that's very much connected to the people. Like the Loi with the Vav, Loi Tzar, in other words, where he is being impacted, or what we called before, the Das level of Malchus. Now, says the Rebbe, since both of these ideas are coming in one word, in the word Elul, it's understood that they also go together. It's not each one is in a completely separate time. And the Rebbe is going to explain this on both sides. First of all, regarding the Cheshbon Tzedek from the previous year, as well as the crowning of the Eibishter for the coming year. So the Cheshbon Tzedek for the previous year, which we mainly said is more like the Loi with a Vav, where our actions matter and we're doing tshuva for them. But where is the kapara coming from? It's coming from the Loi with the Vav. In other words, it's coming from this aspect of Hashem, where everything that we did, there's no blemish that can really cause any damage, because the tshuva is coming. We're reaching to a level of Hashem that's beyond any of our aveiros. And therefore we have this connection. On the one hand, our avodah is we're involved in the avodah of rectifying, doing tshuva and Torah mitzvahs, but it's the koyach for the kapara is coming from the Loi with an aleph, the level that's higher than Ishtalshalos. On the other hand, in the avodah of accepting Hashem as our melech, so on the one hand, again, we're trying to reach into that level which is beyond all of Ishtalshalos, the place where whatever we do really is almost like insignificant. That's like the Loi with an aleph. But the purpose of it is that it should lead us, when we crown the Eibishter as our king, that it should lead us to our avodah of Torah and mitzvahs, to keep the laws of the king properly, like the Loi with a Vav, where the things that we do are very, very important, of course. And through doing all of this, we cause that Yivchar Loi, that the Eibishter chooses us, but it doesn't only remain in a place of higher than Ishtalshalos, but it comes down like the Loi with a Vav, meaning it comes on practically into Ishtalshalos and into our world by having the Eibishter giving us Aksiva v'chsima toiva, Ashana toiva mesukah, b'toiva nirva nigla l'mata me'asara tvachim.